is running a bit late, but because Dan has to leave by 9 o'clock, so we'll make a start. And when Sonia comes, she'll be joining us on the panel as well. All good? Great. Good morning everyone, and a very warm welcome to this SME for Labour and Barclays Bank meeting here at Labour Conference in Liverpool. Conference has been incredibly busy this year. Ministers, colleagues, and campaigners are often committed to more than 2 events at the same time, like Dan is today. So I want to thank you for joining us this morning, this morning bright and early. We're delighted to see such a strong turnout of business leaders, policymakers, and activists who share our passion for supporting Britain's small and medium-sized enterprise. SMEs are the backbone of our economy, making up 60% of UK employment and over half of national turnover. Yet, as the report we are launching today shows, investment levels in SMEs lag behind those of larger companies. Unlocking the investment is not just about growth for individual businesses, it's about delivering a 60 billion annual boost to the UK economy, creating good jobs and building confidence in our communities. This morning, we'll be discussing how we can diagnose the barriers SMEs face, how the government's new SME strategy can help, and the role of finance and innovation in building a real growth market. We'll hear from Minister, from Barclays research team, and from the business voices on the ground. I should also say at the outset, as I mentioned earlier, that our keynote speaker, Dan Tomlinson MP, will have to leave early. Like many colleagues here at the conference, he is double and triple booked, but we are grateful that he has made time to join us this morning. With that, let's get started. Our first panelist will be Dan Tomlinson, MP, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dan. Dan is a Member of Parliament for Chipping Barnet and the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. He's the...
At 10 p.m. last night, which is the earliest I'd ever left the thing at conference, because I knew I had to be here at 8:30, so I wonder who was out the latest last night. Anyone make it out past midnight? Okay, so this is a different crowd. Yes, one, very good, very good.
We're still out.
Very good, yeah. Some of you haven't even gone home. You've just been going around all the pods. But really good to be here. Yeah, yesterday I was doing some rallies where I did some call and responses, talking about the Chancellor's priorities. So we need to go further and faster on growth. We'll see already the third one, right? But don't worry, I won't start with that this morning, because I imagine the energy levels are a bit lower, there's a bit less alcohol blowing in the system. Instead, I'm actually going to deliver quite a boring set of opening remarks, so forgive me, but hopefully not in delivery or in some of the content, but essentially I'm just going to do a list of things for you that I think are really important, and they're all quite macro. You have to forgive me on that. They're all quite big picture, in part because I'm the Treasury Minister, the Treasury thinking about the macro economy, but I'm interested, if we get time, in hearing from you and other panelists about some of the more micro things that matter when it comes to SMEs. I was recently appointed on the 1st of September as the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, which means I'm in charge of tax, so you can feel free to ask me about that, and do get in touch with me about your ideas on tax reform as well. But I will finish there. So firstly, on borrowing costs. It is a massive problem that our borrowing costs are as high as they are in the UK. They went up significantly around the time that Liz Truss was Prime Minister. We had 8 interest rate rises sort of in quick succession. We have had 5 cuts since Labour came into office, in part because the Chancellor and the Prime Minister brought back that stability to our economy. But we need to acknowledge that interest rates are still, they're higher than many SMEs and the government would like them to be. We've had lower interest rates and lower borrowing costs for the state, which would mean that we have more space to spend money on public services or to cut taxes. And it's similar for SMEs as well, right? If you're thinking of expanding, but the borrowing costs are as high as they are, and the access to finance is as difficult as it can be, then it's difficult to grow. And so what are the routes to getting borrowing costs down? The first is to be really focused on inflation. And I know that the Chancellor is personally really sees that what we can do as a government to bring down the cost of living for people, both because that matters for people's living standards, but also because it can help reduce the pace of increase in prices, which, is too high at 3.8%, and we want it to be much closer to 2%. So I hope and expect that in the budget, so I can't go to the budget in any way, shape or form, all decisions of the budget will be made by the Chancellor and will be announced then in late November. But I am expecting that we will do all we can within the constraints that we have to help on the cost of living and to help on inflation. Secondly, what we need to do, and this is not something that I think the public have traditionally associated with Labour, but I hope they come to associate with us over the course of the time that this government is in power between now and the next election. I want them, the public, to see by the time of the next general election, and I hope that they're trusting us again, that we have actually reduced the deficit. So, obviously the Tories spent a lot of time talking about that and didn't really end up doing it. It's really important for the trust of the bond markets, for the trust of people who are putting their trust in this country, that we stick to the plans that the Chancellor set out at the last budget. So actually this year, I think we're the only G7 economy where the government is borrowing less than what it was before. The deficit is coming down. And we need to show in this budget, for all the SMEs across the country, for all the businesses that are relying on a stable economy, that we can continue to get day-to-day public spending in line with tax revenues. That's the Chancellor's plan. I'm 100% confident she's going to stick to it. She's talked about how the fiscal rules are non-negotiable, and that is essential. And it doesn't get the party started at the Labour Party conference fringe, but it's incredibly important, and it would make a difference as well. Secondly, we need to get growth rates up. The Chancellor before the election talked about stability, investment and reform, and I think people unfairly will say, oh, the government doesn't have a growth strategy. That's totally and absolutely wrong. We have a really clear one, and it can be presented in lots of different ways, but I think of it as stability, investment and reform. I talked a bit about the stability side of things. That's also commitments around business taxation, where we don't want to be chopping and changing. That's always corporation tax thresholds and rates up and down almost every single year. But then the two next planks, investment and reform, and that is so crucial, because if we can get growth up, we can get living standards up, we can have all of the consumers and the public that are engaging with SMEs have more money in their pockets to spend and to circulate around the economy. We just say briefly on investment and reform. So investment really is two parts. One, public sector investment, where it's still under-remarked on. I talk about it all the time, and I know Labour MPs, I can see some wonderful Labour MPs in the room who talk about this as well. Mike Regan talks about it a lot. Public sector investment, right? At the budget last year, the Chancellor increased public sector investment by £100 billion over the course of this Parliament, making sure the fiscal rules allow space for that, and we did it in a prudent way. But that is really, really very important, because if you're a small business based in, say, central Leeds, and the way to get more people coming into your shop or to your business is to have more people being able to commute and work in city centre of Leeds. Well, actually, Leeds is the largest city in Europe without a mass transit system. You go to loads of countries in Germany, France, Spain, and London, you have mass transit, which you don't have it in Leeds. And so big companies can't locate that. I don't know whether Barclays has an office there or how big it is. They can't get the talent, and the small businesses can't feed off that. So we said we're going to build a Leeds tram. We're investing £3.5 billion in connectivity between Leeds and Manchester and Liverpool when it comes to rail across the north. 15 billion in total in public sector transport investment. And there's lots more that the public sector investment is doing, but I hope it's going to enable us to get our economy growing for the long term, so that people have so that our cities outside London and the towns and the villages near them can grow and prosper again. Let me give you one more fact on this, on our regional imbalances. England, and you can't say in the UK because Edinburgh is very rich, England is the only large city in Europe, the only large country in Europe where we only have one above average productivity large city. Let's just say that again. So England is the only large country in Europe where we only have one above average productivity large city, which is just crazy, people. That is crazy. Like Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, I could go on. These cities should have above average productivity because we're a service-based economy, we have a agglomeration effect, but we don't. We've all got it down. In London, I'm very proud to be an MP, but a fantastic city in London, but we need to get growth up in our nations and regions across the country, and that's what our investment is about. Public and private, crowding and private sector investment. And then reform, I'm going on, so I'm going to stop in a second, but on reform, I think two important things. Number one is pension reform, to pool investment and to enable more investment in UK industry. And second is planning reform, which the Chancellor, I'm sure, will have more to say about in the coming weeks. And I know Steve really gets that we need to do what we can from the MSCLG side on too. Finally, let me just talk about tax reform. So some of you may have spotted that we published a Transforming Business Rates paper a few weeks back. If you haven't, you should go on the Treasury website and read it. It's really exciting stuff. But it is really important, some of the ideas that are in there. One of the things I'm seized of in my time in the role that I've got in government now, I saw the average tenure of people in this job is 1 year. So I've not got long, but hopefully I'll get to stay for more than one budget and get some reform done, some pro-growth tax reform. And I think that some of the ideas in the Transforming Business Rates paper, which don't have to be the end of the reforms that we try and do in this Parliament, are really important. So things like things that we want to look at would be expanding the relief that small businesses get. So if you expand from 1 to 2 shops, you can still get significant relief. We want to look at things like switching from a slab system to a slice system. So if you nudge up a bit, you don't suddenly get taxed on our business rate on your whole premises. We want to look at the improvement relief, because at the moment, if a small business invests in their premises, then they end up having to pay higher business rates quite quickly. Can we look at changing that so there's more incentive to grow? There are other changes in there on business rates that I want to look at too, and I'd be interested to hear ideas, and for you, if you're running or involved in small business, to get in touch with me on how we can help there. So that's enough for me. We need to get borrowing costs down to help businesses. We need to get growth rates up so people can be richer in this country and more money to spend in SMEs up and down the country. And we need to reform our tax system so it's pro-growth and supports SMEs as well. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be relatively brief. Here really to represent the views of 13,000 corporates that we're privileged to serve and nearly 1 million small businesses. As Ibrahim said, we published some research today because we really wanted to get underneath the skin of the fact that if we want the economy to grow, that's only going to happen if businesses increase the investment in their own businesses. Pleased to say the data would suggest that's happening. So business investment in the UK hit a new record in 2024, and through the first half of this year, it's already up 3% year on year. The challenge is that's all being driven by larger businesses. If you look underneath those headlines, smaller businesses aren't investing in their own businesses. And we did some back-of-the-envelope analysis that suggested if we could get smaller businesses, SMEs, investing at the same rate as larger businesses, there's a £60 billion fiscal opportunity for the UK. So the question is obvious, which is what is it going to take to actually do that? And again, those SMEs represent 52% of national turnover and 60% of employment. And that's where the real economic unlock is. If we can get them to invest in growing that employment and growing their income and turnover, that'll make a big difference. So what is it that's going to do that? There's 3 buckets broadly framed. So the first is foundational factors. So small businesses aren't investing right now because they don't have confidence in the economy. So they've got political and policy uncertainty that's preventing them from investing. They don't have the same resilience as larger businesses, so they can't take the same degree of risk. And if they stare into the future and they're uncertain about what the environment might look like in 6, 12, 18 months, they're not going to make a 5-year investment in building capital or other investments that they need to do. Second is competitive investments. They're facing rising costs, whether that's general inflation, national insurance, minimum wage. All of these things may be necessary to do, but they're not getting the broader support to help offset that. and they know that there's a huge game going on in technology. There's a race, and they've got to invest in that, but they don't, again, have the confidence to know where to go to pick whatever they think the technology might be that's going to help their business best. And again, they don't have the resources to take multiple bets. They've got to find the one that's going to work for them and really invest heavily in it. And then finally, those big bets that are going to drive in expansion and drive their growth rates the most. But you can only get to those big bets if you've got the prior two in place. So I think there's a lot to do over the course of the next couple of years to help build that confidence, help make sure that small businesses are getting the support they need to make those competitive investments that are going to make them competitive, not just against peers here in the UK, but also in a more geopolitically complex world where trade is definitely on the opportunity for them, but also in a more complex environment. And then finally, that's what's going to unlock those big bets on expansion that's really going to get the economic growth for the whole UK spinning up a lot faster than it is today.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Under the last government, you had Boris Johnson, who, for all his faults, seemed to believe in net zero. And then you had Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, who chopped and changed, who dropped things. I think one of Rishi Sunak's big speech announcements, as well as banning smoking, and that weird speech he did, was about changing policies on net zero, and then he also scrapped HS2, didn't he? Boo. Whereas we've said, we've got this mission on clean power, that's where we want to get to. We've got other strands where we're saying we've got long-term change, we want to partner with business. I had a question for Matt, which is, I genuinely think, I'm not just saying this because I'm a minister, I genuinely think that the government is essentially doing all of the right things when it comes to providing the sort of stability and the foundation for confidence that the country needs. If you just look at what are the plausible routes to providing that, number one is having fiscal rules that you stick to. Number two is having a plan to get the economy growing in all parts of the country, which involves higher public and private investment. Number three, fixing the state so that when people get sick, they're looked after, so that if they need education training, they can get it. And you mentioned that people don't have the confidence that they would need to invest. So what more can and should we be doing as a government to enable that to happen? That would be really interesting to hear from your work.
I'm just conscious Sonia's patiently waiting to share some remarks, but I'll be brief. I think there's three things. So one, and I don't mean this in a critical way, I think the government's saying all the right things, but I don't think if you're a small business in the regions of the UK, you're feeling that actively. And in fact, there's quite a lot, I would say, in the media that would run against it. And so I think if you don't have direct access to this support, larger businesses will, because they can go to London and they can go to Westminster in particular and see their member of parliament or ministers to get a better sense of what sits underneath, if you will, the rhetoric that's otherwise being propagated. If you're a small business out in the regions in the north and the southwest or the southeast, you don't have that privilege. And I would say the single biggest thing is get out. And when I spend time with your colleagues in the Department for Business and Trade, they would say, well, we do a lot of that outreach. But again, if you talk to businesses, they don't know where it is, they don't know when it is, and it's often showing up and saying things that they've already read somewhere. So I think finding ways to shift that into a far more practical, applied sort of evidence of support, I think will be a huge thing. Because at the end of the day, we talk about building confidence, but what you're really doing is building trust. And you're creating the foundations of stability, but again, if you're 100 miles or 200 miles away from the center of power that's doing that, you don't know whether or not that's going to get to you, or is it solving a problem for somebody else. And I think that's the trust problem that is only going to get solved by getting a bit more proximate to the people that need that confidence.
Thank you both. That's government.
You're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed in here this morning. So I am the member of Parliament for Dudley, not Dudley North, so Dudley. And I do have the pleasure to sit on the Business and Trade Committee. So I have a slightly different role where I'm scrutinising the government and the decisions they're making. So I've got a slightly different lens of where I come from. And I know how important SMEs are, not just the national economy, but the communities we serve, being a greengrocer's daughter. Now, don't make the joke. I am front and centre when I was selling sort of veg with my dad, to then I got promoted to do his accounts. So I really understand the importance of an SME and the special relationship you have with customers. And what you not just give to the community, but actually what you get back out as well as a shop. So SMEs around 99% of businesses, it provides about 6% of private activity, and it generates up to 2 trillion a year, and I don't think anyone really thought that actually true. I had to check the fact 3 times. That is 2 trillion, and that is a significant turnover. Yet despite their scale and significance, they continue to face disproportionate barriers to investment and growth. Now, I know Barclays done some research which shows that business investment is rising overall, but SMEs are still lagging behind. Micro businesses, with those with the least capacity, are the most cautious. And this is not a reflection of their ambition, actually, it's about the environment they're operating in. So SMEs lack confidence and ability to risk, but I think the Labour government and the new SME plan is so important. We're legislating to end the scourge of late payments, which is costing the UK businesses 11 billion a year, closing down 38 businesses every single day. And we're cutting regulatory burden by 25% by modernising the tax system with AI-generating tools, expanding access to finance through the British Business Bank Growth Guarantee Scheme and startup loans. But I think we need to go further. And to be honest, there's lots of inequalities that persist. In 2022, 2% of venture capital went to only female-funded businesses, 2% fully. And that's not just a gender gap, it's a missed economic opportunity. Equalising access to finance to support women entrepreneurs will unlock 250 billion for the economy. And that's why our plan also targets support to underrepresented founders, better data collection, and initiatives like Invest in Women's Task Force. Now, I'm not in the Treasury, I'm not a minister, so I'm going to say the 3 things that I think needs to happen. I think 1, we need better access to finance, getting banks to be less risk averse and lend to SMEs without having years of trading. I think 2, we need to improve digital literacy so SMEs are actually globally competitive. And we want to look at other places like India, what they're doing, government-backed programs to improve digital literacy across SMEs. And that is going to be just far and wide, not just cities and towns, but rural areas and cities to coastal areas. And that includes accounting, marketing, online traditions, social media. How do you get, to expand your business? 3rd, I think we need more workforce planning. We've got an ageing population. I think skills, reskilling, CPD, retention and immigration all needs to be a package that we look at to sort of to safeguard SMEs for the future. Now in Dudley, I've seen firsthand how local businesses thrive when they get the right support, from high street retailers to manufacturing. SMEs are ready to grow. But it's when SMEs get invested, Britain grows, and when women lead, Britain thrives. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you to all services. What practical tools or resources would SMEs find most useful in such a hub based on your research?
Well, I'll pick maybe a specific example. I alluded earlier to the fact that trade is both now a huge opportunity, but also a more complex one, given the volatility and variability of tariffs happening across different regions. The government has in place a tremendous amount of tools and resources that can help businesses figure out how to trade internationally, including quite a lot of support from UK Export Finance. Again, if you're a SME out where in the regions around the UK, you may not be aware of that. Even if you're aware of it, you may not necessarily know where to go to get access to it. And then if you can go and read things online, you don't necessarily have the confidence to draw that down and take the risk of plunging into potentially either the first time you do international trade or growing that very significantly. I think businesses often tell us who've bridged that divide that once they either get someone who can help them figure that out or build their own self-confidence to do it, they find the resources, but again, they're a bit in different places and they're not relatively easy to find and they're not relatively easy to understand and access. So what we've said in terms of an Invest to Grow hub, again, this point about building trust is a big part of that in our experience, is just making things really simple, because the more barriers there are and the more difficult it is, 1, your own confidence gets sapped, but 2, you wonder if people are trying to make it hard because they don't necessarily really want to help you. So having that orientation of not just the rhetoric around growth, but making it easy to get all of those resources in one place and helping people who don't necessarily have the expertise or experience having done it before get access to it and make use of it very simply, we think would complement what I described earlier about that proximity out in the region so that people see and feel the quality and the depth of support that's available.
Thank you, Matt. I know Dan has to leave now. Do you want to say something about the business growth hubs before you go? Is this something Treasury would consider supporting, do you think?
It does sound really important, but the thing I want to say before I go, I don't know who's in the room, maybe you're all Labour members already, maybe you're not. But I just want to make quite a strong political point, if I may, before I go, which is we, all of us, SMEs, big businesses, small businesses, people involved in politics, people not, we have a choice. And Keir will set out that choice for the country tomorrow. But we have a choice, which is do we take that risk and invest in the future now, expand our business, give out an extra loan, do the things that we need to do to grow our economy. We will do all we can from the government side, but we need to do it together. Because if we don't, in 3.5 years' time, there will be a man who will become Prime Minister, his name is Nigel Farage, and there will be mass deportations up and down this country, that's their policy. There will be a budget that is 10, 20 times worse than what Liz Truss tried to do and failed to do, which will cause economic calamity and ruin for small businesses, for communities, for families up and down this country, and we'll have a leader that says that he admires Vladimir Putin in Downing Street. And that is the choice. We all know that the Labour government, yes, there's more we need to do. We've done some amazing things already, and that is what we're facing now, and it's becoming sort of increasingly clear that that is where we're heading to in 2029. And you all know, I know, that the decisions that we make now, the decisions that the private sector makes now about trying to get in that finance, trying to work together with a partner down the road, trying to get the council to approve, they take time. And if we want to get an economy that's motoring and firing on all cylinders in 2028, 2029, in time when the public face their choice at the ballot box, we've got to start doing the things we can do now. So I just want to leave that sort of thought with you, because yes, it's on me in the Treasury to make the right decisions on tax, but we have a collective responsibility to make sure that we don't unleash a version of this Truss times 10 on the British public in sort of the emergency budget of late 2029.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
Labour business. I've always been a Labour business, and I have particularly always been interested in the work of the Small Business Administration in the United States. In the United States, the Small Business Administration, a government body, crowds in over 50 billion in private capital loaned to small businesses by a whole network of organisations. It's underwritten fully by the American state. The default rate is only 3%. Why don't we have a Small Business Administration here as well?
More about what we can expect from that, assuming we haven't read it. Because cash flow, you speak to any small business owner, cash flow is king. I'm sitting on maybe 3/4 of my revenue sat in my age debt, which is terrifying. And there's actually no mechanism at the moment that I can use to chase it. It costs me money to chase it. I have to decide whether it's worth it. And quite often it's not. So yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Zero, so you have small businesses that come to us who have an inherent fear of numbers. I don't do numbers, I don't understand, generalising it. So lots of people don't understand the basics of numbers, and often they are people from underserved, underrepresented groups in particular. So my question is, if we're helping investment in the UK, how do we better collaborate and support people to know their numbers so they feel confident in making those investments, understanding, feeling more confident that maybe chase like payments or similar like. Because I think there's a big gap in how people understand finances to start with. Because you go into business because you're a great florist, right? So you go into business because you want to get into the depth of accounting. So.
Thank you, Laura.
We've got the rudiments of it in the British Business Bank and the National Wealth Fund. Whether or not they work in exactly the same way, I would say they don't yet, but the ingredients are there to create the opportunity to do that. And again, I think the difference in my personal experience, you can tell by my accent, I am from the US, the Small Business Administration views itself on the side of business to encourage, if you will, businesses to take risk and draw down, if you will, on what are effectively government guarantees, to help encourage them to invest in themselves and grow. And I would say personally, the experience here is sometimes it feels the opposite if you're a small business. The British Business Bank is there in theory to help support. It doesn't necessarily always feel like it's fighting on your behalf to be able to get access to the funds. It's more administrating it. And that's not a criticism of it. I just think there's a mindset shift that would make a big difference again in building trust and confidence that small businesses know there's someone on their side to go fight, if you will, within the complexity of government rather than it's just another arm of government that they've got to fight with themselves.
I'm going to go with zero first. I think so many businesses come when we speak to them, they say to us, right, we've got a great idea, we're an entrepreneur, this is what I do, it's fantastic, but they then say, well, I don't know how to do social media, or I don't know how to do the marketing, or I don't know how to do the numbers. And I think my ambition, so I can say this as I'm a backbench MP, the thing that I would love to see is a massive national spread of resources of how to do social media, how do you do training, a basic course on how do you do your accounting, or websites that be directed to that are backed by the government to say these are the really great accountants, speak to these people, or a business hub, which I agree we should do, having gone to the US and looking at their sort of how they've composed their business support, we should definitely do something really similar. Because at the moment it's really spread out and it's sparse. So those people that know, like, have got a big public affairs team, they know, right, this is the ministry we need to speak, this is the route we need to go to, oh, I know how to speak to my MP. Well, there are some businesses on the high street who want to expand but just don't know where to go, don't know how to access finance. Those people that don't know how to actually export, and that there is a massive industry that you could go, right, my brilliant business, this tech business could be expanded, but don't know. So I think there should be like these hubs on our high street, not just in this virtual world. You can go in, walk in, because we know SMEs don't have time to be Googling this and then searching this. I think we need to have a physical presence on the high street where you go in, you speak to somebody and say, this is my problem, and then loads of people come in one go, and there might be someone that does in that hub, that does accounting, that does the social media, some young people. I'm not saying that more mature people aren't do social media, but the young ones with the TikTok and the videos, it all in one place, and that sort of brings like an ecosystem and hub where you can just get growth. So I'm fully behind it.
So it sounds like that.
What speaks to you about entrepreneurship? I think you and I had a number of conversations about that. I think the big thing is when we go from sort of going from school, it's first thing is going on to further education or getting employment. There is no other option to talk about. Actually, I want to open my own business and I want to set it up and I want to I've got this great idea and I can be an entrepreneur. And I think we need to change the culture about that. Because at the moment it's all about, there's only two options for you. You get employed or you go to university or further education. So I think the culture in the UK needs to change, that we are being more entrepreneurial, because we are great with tech, we are great with services, and we are, pioneering in terms of medicine in the UK, but we just sort of think, oh no, maybe later on in life, maybe later on. So I think we need to do a shift early on. So, and that comes back to education. So every single time I speak, most people will know that I always come back to investing in young people and starting there to say that this could be an option for you as you get older. And in terms of the support, I think, as I said, I'd love to see a massive website, how to set a business up, what do you do, really the basics and foundation. And I think this is actually already available in places like India, where they already have this system, and they're quite happy to, really get those young people to be, inspired. But we don't have that sort of infrastructure in the UK, so I think that would be something that we could benefit from. Talking about what we're doing with the EU, having gone over, I think things have been quite difficult and challenging to say the least. And I think, now that we have a Labour government, relationships are improving with the EU. You know, we are talking about youth mobility scheme where we get sort of the you know, it's a win-win for both sides of the EU and us. But I think it's a long way to go yet before we can start talking about investment. And I think the Brexit's done, and we're not going to open that door again and start opening those conversations. But strong relationships with our biggest trading partner is a no-brainer. And I think coming back to what Dan said, sorry, we've really got to think about, you know, when we're going on now and thinking about the future, is if we end up having a government that doesn't want to work with the EU, wants to get out of all these laws and doesn't believe in the rule of law, we're going to be in a state of market free fall, because what if businesses won't have any stability left? So I think close relations to the EU, I think that's going to be an ongoing thing as each year goes on and that relationship cements. And then in terms of what we're talking about, I'm going to have to get actually to read the question because unfortunately I haven't got my pen and I was like, oh God, can you ask the question again for me please?
Just in terms of from family business perspective, the differential between small and mid-sized businesses in the finance scale, but also family businesses not wanting to say third, fourth generation don't want to bet the farm on exporting, so they're risk averse in that regard. So then what's the support in terms of having support in their export journey, but also access and finance once they start to scale up?
So access finance is changing. One, there will be a report, an inquiry from the Business and Trade Committee, which you're all welcome to read up, which will be next year, because I think that's so important, because we don't expand business really well in the UK, and what happens is, and I'm talking about more bigger businesses, they just go to the US, get investment, and then stay there. So, and we're then having our London Stock Exchange is, you know, the amount of listings reduced significantly by 40% because people just aren't listing. And I know you're talking about small businesses, but I think it's really important if we're looking about evolving that business further and further. Now, in terms of export to finance, that has changed, and there now is a much better and robust system that we have. So it's now should be a one-stop shop and a stream where those people that have got a business that want to expand, if you go onto the website, I'm informed that this is working well, and I hope somebody might be able to tell me further, that you can get all the support, how do you list. So the best thing that we can look at is what the whisky, the industry did in Scotland, and how we can replicate that with other products, British-based products, and then sell that on showcase when we're touring or going out from the UK. And that's not just in the Business and Trade Committee, but also ministers and where they're going at and what we're doing from British products. So there is a website. It is getting a lot more streamlined for exports in particular.
Briefly, on entrepreneurship, I would say my view and our view is there's an incredibly vibrant spirit of entrepreneurship in the UK. We just don't celebrate, promote, and encourage it anywhere near as much as we should. Exactly as I think as Sonia said, there isn't necessarily an academic stream, but I don't even think there's a sort of expectation that that's a viable career opportunity, and that's a shame, because we've privileged through what we call Barclays Life Skills to have helped about 15 million young people across the UK over the vast many years, and many of them are budding entrepreneurs. When you spend time with them, that's exactly what they want to go do, but they feel like that's not it wouldn't be a successful path for them to pursue, and I think that's a shame. And I would just say to the EU point, I can't talk about the political aspect of that, but I can say from a practical one, we had dinner last night with Steve Rotherham, the mayor of Liverpool City region, a number of businesses and others from the region. And I would say the north is a phenomenal standout. I talked about national averages earlier here in the north of England. It's running against that national average. You're seeing SMEs investing, and it isn't because someone from the EU showed up to provide funding. It's because the mayors and the local councils around the north have got together and figured out how to effectively crowd that in themselves, including the University of Manchester, who set up their own £300 million fund to help spin-outs from the university get the funding that they needed to scale up and then drive success. And I think there's something in that around people not waiting for someone from outside to show up and sort of provide the opportunity, but to get, again, the capabilities, resources, and spirit that are marshaled to be able to help unlock opportunity. And I would just say on trade, the big thing I would say say is, I think as Sonia said, the resources are there. When we talk to small businesses, including family-owned ones who did take the risk of doing that first international trade, it was finding the right person that they trusted to help them not just understand the resource, but do it. And in fact, most of the products people like UK Export Finance have, they take the risk out of it. And that's the whole point, if you will, a lot of the guarantees and indemnities that they provide is you don't know the counterparty that you're dealing with in some foreign country, but people like us do. And so we can help provide reassurance and guarantees that mean you're prepaid up front, you're guaranteed to get the money one way or the other, and we take the risk away from you. But you don't know that product is available, and you don't know who to go talk to in order to be able to get access to it. The resources are there, but you've got to connect people with the resources and then help them understand them better.
Website of resources that people can access, so everyone's got that equity. But in terms of like grants or any startup, initiatives like CPD or skills, whatever package you need, that needs to be delivered, I think, to local government. At the moment, I think local government have got so many pressing financial issues, whether it's like health and social, whether it's children in care, that actually what happens is some of the other things like business just comes off the radar. There's less money in the budget to be invested into how do we get our high streets rejuvenated. Because one thing that people say time and time again is, the area that I live in, it's gone downhill. It's not the same as it used to be. We've lost our big chains off the high street, but they're not looking at how they can be regenerated by SMEs, by really great SMEs that can come in with their unique business, maybe it's homegrown, whether it's something that they found, a niche in the market, and they can build them. And that's what I'd like to see in my constituency of Dudley, where I'd love to see a massive M&S, and I think people would love to see some, Primark. I don't know where everyone loves the Primark, but they love it in my constituency. They've got one in there, but that's not going to happen. The towns have changed now, so I think by getting access, coming back to access to finance, I think it needs to come from the mayors, and those I don't know with mayors will be local government, and then that gets trickled down into local and hyper-local work where there are hubs on the high street. That's what I think the ideal model will be. Now, I think I'm going to speak to you about the access to finance. That was one of the things I said need to be the access to finance, digital literacy, and workforce planning, which means skills. So we should be working with, our colleges, what courses they can put on. And my college, I'm going to put a big shout out to Dudley College that has 11,000 students, and there's lots of work when they have with businesses where they are employing businesses to teach on the courses, to get the young people on the courses to actually be inspired to open their own business. So there are some great work that's being done. We just now need to replicate it across everywhere else in the region, instead of having sparse places like rural areas as nothing, and then cities as everything. So that's my plug on cities as a town woman. In terms of how we work together, 100% when it comes to getting more women in business. So it was International Women's Day, and I did a lot of work with working with businesses and going in, supporting them, saying how great they are. We did like a video about all what they give to the economy, and it's work that I've done with the beauty industry. Again, all women, but never really gets, it's not in the industrial strategy, it's not in anywhere that's getting named, but they work, every single person needs a product, a soap, a hair conditioner or something. They go to the barbers, and it's so important with hospitality as well. So yeah, I would love to take on the effort to work together when it comes to getting more women to get access to finance. And I think it needs to be more women need to have the confidence in themselves to be able to say, I've got a great idea and I'm going to go for it and I'm going to run with it, because sometimes I think women do lack that confidence to say, yeah, I'm good enough to do this.
And I think it links a little bit to the access to finance question. If my colleague Abdul Qureshi, who leads our business bank, was here, he would talk about a service we provide our clients called Demo Directory, which is a way of basically trying to take founders who are in need of capital and individuals, particularly in, say, our private bank or our wealth management service, who are looking for investment opportunities and do the matchmaking. And they might be local or they might be somewhere else in the country, but the people with the capital are often saying, I'd really like to make an investment or put a grant type opportunity in place, but I don't know what the best idea is that I could actually connect that to. So I think, again, creating that connectivity is really important. The only thing I would say on access to finance is there's quite a lot we do and I think is still necessary to help people understand which type of finance is appropriate for their business at the stage of development that it's at. Because there's quite a lot of conversation we have with many small businesses who say, I need a loan. And as a bank, what we often do is obviously go in and look to see whether or not they've got assets or a cash flow. People see that as restrictive, but the reality is it's protective. Because if people don't have cash flow, taking on bank debt is the worst thing that you can do. Because over trading, as we would describe it, is the single most likely reason that a small business fails, because their cash outgoings obviously get out of line with their cash ingoings, and when you take a loan, that's a guaranteed cash outflow, and if you don't have the incoming to offset it, then you're going to get yourself in trouble. So there's quite a lot of conversation that we try to have with businesses around aligning, if you will, the type of finance they need to access with where they're at in their stage of growth, as well as then accessing other things like grants and forms of capital that can help offset that.
As we draw to a close, I want to thank all our speakers, our Minister Dan Tomlinson, Sonia Kumar, Matt Hammerstein, for your contributions, and to thank Barclays for supporting this important discussion. The message this morning has been very clear. SMEs are ready to grow, but they need confidence, consistency, and collaboration. With the right policies, investment, and partnerships, we can unlock billions in growth and create opportunities across every region in the UK. Thank you again for joining us this morning. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.